Governor Nixon grew up in a family where public service was highly valued. His father was the mayor and a city judge in the town he grew up in, just south of St. Louis, and the governor's mother was the first woman to become president of the local school board. The governor has other strong connections to public education in Missouri as well. The First Lady, Georgianne Nixon, has taught in the Jefferson City School District, and her father, the late Hubert Wheeler, was Missouri's first commissioner of education. And I still have his desk if you ever want to come by and visit. Governor Nixon has made education a priority for his administration, providing record funding for our K-12 classrooms even during difficult budget years. He has increased funding for training programs in Missouri's colleges and universities for in-demand fields such as healthcare, and is working with higher education institutions to keep college affordable. We appreciate the governor taking time from his busy schedule today to be with us, so please join me in giving our warm welcome to our state's 55th governor, Jay Nixon.
Thank you. I will say this job is easier when the budget director speaks before me and gets a standing ovation than when the budget director speaks before me and gets respectful applause. But I want to thank Dan for the hard work. I will have to tell you all, most of you had a chance to interact the first 7 years I was governor with Linda Lubering, who's now in the private sector doing very well. But I want to thank Dan for coming over and taking this posting for this year and helping us continue to move our state forward. He's done a tremendous, tremendous job. It's really a pleasure to be here, to look out in this room with the most dedicated and talented champions of public education in America. Okay, we're right here in the heartland, and I want to take just a couple of minutes to talk about a few things, and then I'll let y'all get back to your productive work. On a cold January night in 2009, I stood before the General Assembly of the people of Missouri to deliver my first State of the State address. I laid out a set of 5 shared principles. Principles that weren't Democratic or Republican values, but Missouri values. And the reason I structured that first formal communication to the state and to the legislature was to lay out areas of agreement and then make sure that we continued as best we could to move forward in those areas. Among the 5 principles or values I laid out that night was education. To prepare every child to compete from pre-K to college, support our teachers, make the dream of a college education a reality for more Missouri families. Now, as Commissioner says, support of public education runs deep in my families and has always been a pillar of my policies in public service. So, 7.5 years later from that cold January night, as other states continue to struggle on public education, you all know our record of making public education a top priority. Record funding for elementary and secondary classrooms. Strengthening STEM education by increasing the number of schools offering Project Lead the Way from 130 in 2008 to 473 in 2016. Once again, I really believe in these programs of making sure that we're getting more kids in those STEM or STEAM, whatever. First Lady puts the A in there every time I read speech. But bottom line is those kind of programs are making a huge difference, and I think you're also going to find great, great corporate help to make sure they're successful. Creating Missouri Start Smart to boost successful early childhood education, making more than $15 million available in grants to expand access to preschool. We'll be announcing a series of those coming up in some towns. We're going to be doing 6 grants for facilities in communities that have absolutely no preschool opportunities at all in the state of Missouri, and that is horrible, obviously. We all know that starting kids sooner, the better chance you do that, the more likely it is we're going to have good outcomes long run. So Start Smart is working exceptionally well. Now that Dr. Nitzel has healed from his Start Smart challenge, before we did this program, we talked to the department, and I wanted to go visit some good preschools and public schools around the state. I wanted to get a vision of what they were doing, and I wanted to sit down with the instructors, the parents, and the local leaders and talk about them. And we went to a small school in southeast Missouri. I'm not going to name it here because in the place where the kids were, one of the things they had was to show animals. They had like a pelt of a rabbit and a raccoon, but they also had these racks of deer antlers. And so one of the young 3-year-olds was chasing Dr. Nitzel around with the antlers on. I just wish I would have had a picture of Mike Nitzel being chased by a 3-year-old kid simulating a deer. Some of the other things that he's done while working together would be similar to that, although allegorically, but not exactly the same physically. We've added also 279 schools to the A-plus program. I mean, when I became governor, we had about 249 schools in that. Now we've added 279. We're basically ubiquitous. So what that means is across our state, basically at every school, if kids work hard, play by the rules, and meet those requirements of A+, they got a chance to get 2 years paid for by us at the community college. And we have seen demand for that program surge. So right now, from Campbell to Tarkio, from Neosho to Canton, schools that didn't have A+ before, we now have them, and we're seeing double-digit increases in the number of kids each and every year that are accessing that 2-year scholarship. And it's a great hedge against college costs. It's a great way to get kids involved, and I want to thank the 279 schools that we've worked cooperatively with to get added to that program while I've been governor. So we started with 249. We're now at 279 to that. It adds up to a number. I would say what my guess of that number is, but I don't want to be wrong in front of y'all, so it's like 500 and something. Test scores are up in our state. Graduation rates are among the top 10 in the country. We freeze tuition to make college more affordable. We are #1 in the nation keeping down tuition costs for higher education, public higher education. Feel really proud about that. We've also then dropped, because of that, the average student going to a 4-year public institution in the state of Missouri pays $1,800 a year less than what they would pay if we had continued our tuition just at the national average of increase. So $2,000 a year, so $8,000 basically over a 4 years less tuition cost because we've done it. And we haven't given up on quality at all, okay? Quite frankly, our quality's improved, and we've done some funding things that are dramatic and unique to make sure that we weren't just starving the colleges, but instead investing with them in things that they needed. So with those numbers, we've increased the number of students earning a higher education degree in this state since that January night in 2009, when you went to graduation this year. We have increased the number of students earning a higher education degree in this state by 36%. Okay? That's 50,000 people got 4-year degrees in the state of Missouri. 50,000 in the state of $6.2 million is a solid, that's just at the public 4 years. Okay? We are making this a more educated society. Okay? And education is the best economic development tool there is, and the best thing we can do is have an educated society, and if we do that, we're going to win the economic battles of the future. We've launched innovation campuses to build a fast-track on-ramp from high school to an affordable, rigorous college education. Continue to watch this. We're trying to get to a 3-year college degree, not just by having less there, but doing more in high school, getting more dual enrollment, and then getting high-impact internships. Earlier this morning, you heard Jonathan Berry talk about the new initiative, No Kid Hungry campaign. We think it'll make a real difference in addressing hunger among kids in our schools. It's federal money. We just want to make sure we're as efficient as anybody in America using it. Jonathan Berry is a very capable young man. He started, one of his first postings for us, obviously he's in the National Guard, so he did that deal, but was our Show Me Heroes, where we now have over 7,000 6,800 employers that have hired almost 8,000 veterans in Missouri since I've been governor through that Show Me Heroes program that Jonathan was at the ground floor on. Obviously that is a number that is as good as any place. Together we made remarkable progress and continue to support and improve public education on behalf of families and communities. I'll tell you, one other thing I just want to take, actually two, but I'll just say one and maybe I'll keep interest here. When I got reelected, one of the things I did was sit down and take a week and read a short biography of the 54 governors before me. To get some history lessons. Understanding that I'm only the fourth, only 3 other people have had consecutive terms as governor in Missouri's history. So it's a pretty unique space to be in, and I wanted to see what others had done and kind of reprime the pump for me. I'm not going to go through what all those biographies said, although I will note that 3 of our governors did commit suicide in office. 2 of them in the office. Y'all need not worry about that. My megalomania will prevent that from occurring for me. It's much more likely somebody will come after me than me. But what I saw from that is sometimes you make history and sometimes history makes you. So you have to play both offense and defense. You don't get to just play offense. I've laid out offensive things we've done here, and that's good. I mean, school's doing better, test scores doing better, more folks going to college. But I think it's also, especially in this setting, as I make my last speech to this group at this particular time, to recognize and acknowledge the successful defense we've had, not because the fights are over, but because I submit to you that we're in a never-ending tussle on some of these issues. Well, the past 7.5 years, by vetoes and other actions, we have stopped voucher schemes. Okay? Now, just that. We are never, ever going to be able to fund public education if we take K through 12 public education money and give it to private schools. Private schools are fine. I believe in them. I support them. They got the right to do what they could do, and we need to have them. They're part of our education system. No problem at all. But in a low-tax state like Missouri, if you ever have what's happened in some of these other states, it's going to be, you can't, once that hole, and you have to be calmly radical about it, okay? Well, I mean, you all heard me, some of you heard me talk about this before. I was involved in the construction industry at various times in my life, both with a shovel as well as in the law practice. But when you build an earthen dam, or for a pond or a lake, they're designed so that if it rains a lot and they fill up, that there's a spot on that dam on the side where there's a spillway, so that the water will go where the designers of the dam want it to, and it won't go over the middle of the dam. If the water does go over the middle of an earthen dam, it is guaranteed it will fail. In other words, because once that first drop goes over, it erodes and it falls and goes. That's the way you got to think about vouchers. Not that it's only this much money or that much money, but once you have that first drop of water over that dam, then you are marching your way towards a time in which you're not going to have the resources to do what you want. We have fought successfully open enrollment. And believe me, I appreciate parents having choices. I do. But if you go to rural Missouri, that just won't work. And open enrollment, and plus, if you break the bond of a community with its schools, then y'all are never going to pass a bond issue, okay? If you have open enrollment, somebody else, then somebody else pays, and you got a bunch of freeloaders. I mean, the way that public education works is when communities support it and communities take on the responsibility. And so my problem with open enrollment is not that parents shouldn't have choices, but that if we break the bond of communities and their schools financially, we can't succeed. I mean, we have beat away attempts to get rid of tenure. We have faced up attacks on the teaching profession. And I want to thank everybody here for their help at various times on some of these tax schemes that I've had to veto that they tried to pass. I went 6 years saying I'm not going to say anything bad about other states. Then I went 6.5 years. And then I got into my 7th year and other states started saying bad stuff about us. And so I went 7 years and like 2 months. I mean, but when Perry was coming up here from Texas and telling Missouri businesses to leave, I had to explain to him that their sales tax rate's out of control down there, and oh, by the way, their education system's not delivering the way Missouri is. But when, you know, I just, when this Singfield cat calls me an idiot, I just got to assume he's looking in the mirror when he's talking instead of like speaking. So I'm a better angel guy. You guys know me, but this stuff on Kansas, I mean, when these guys, I mean, you can't run schools if you don't have money. And you just can't, you know. And so I just appreciate everybody. I mean, stopping 253 a few years ago, standing with us on the Friday Favors stuff, it would have been another $1.2 billion. We're fighting so many rear guards on special interest tax breaks. I got 60 million of them that are on my desk right now that I vetoed. Just a bunch of stuff. It never goes the other way. You know, it continues to erode. And when folks like Dan make their presentations and they have to explain to you why the economy's doing better, sales tax is rising, personal income tax is rising, but the state's budget is staying flat or even going down some months because that corporate income tax number has dropped so much. I mean, you can see it. So being vigilant with us on this stuff is important, and I tremendously appreciate it. Today is primary election day. I will have to tell you, it was nice to look at a ballot and not see my name on it. Well, I mean, I'm 142 days away from getting my full First Amendment rights back. It ain't that easy now. I mean, everybody's got a camera, everybody's got a phone. Anything you say, they kind of copy it down and repeat it. And if you have some position of responsibility, a margin I do, and the state board, they got to kind of talk in calm ways, but and not flame things up. But you can rest well assured that my rhetorical skills have not been fully shown in the current position that I hold. But First Lady and I are excited about the next stage of our life. I told somebody else, it's about a month ago, about 6 weeks ago, Georgiana and I, Saturday night, we're doing what exciting couples do on Saturday night. We were watching C-SPAN at 9:45 on Saturday night. Well, the reason we were watching it was because that was the night of the Correspondents' Dinner. So the president gets up and gives what's trying to be a funny speech. And it was it's very funny to Georgiana. I mean, the president gets up and he said, look, he's about halfway through his speech, and he said, you know, I want to thank the Secret Service. I just appreciate them. I mean, it's a hard job, and our family thanks them for their professionalism. Some of you may have seen in the press, the president said, last few months there have been some times for over the fence around the White House. You know, and that's not supposed to happen, okay? And it gets a lot of attention, and the Secret Service gets a lot of trouble when folks get over the fence. He said, but I want to hear publicly thank the Secret Service for on both of those occasions getting out in the neighborhoods, finding Michelle, and bringing her back to the White House. There's sometimes with Georgiana, I mean, she's already got her First Amendment rights, so I'm saying you all need not worry about where she is. But as this election day, you know, the field will be narrowed, and this fall there'll be an election. It's going to be really important that public education be part of the discussion of this election in our state. And I'm not trying to make a comment about which party, and quite frankly, in this job, if people are saying partisan things, if they say, well, a Democrat or Republican in front of you, all they're doing is making an excuse for a position that they don't agree with. Okay, when they're dealing with you. If somebody sits down with you and they say, well, I'm a Republican, or well, I'm a Democrat, or whatever, then you say, well, okay, fine, say your words. Let me get somebody I can deal with. But we've got to make public education part of the discussion in this state, and we've got to get people on the record, on the line about where they are on some of these issues. Because if they don't, some of the gains that we've had could be undermined in a lot of ways. So I believe it's the best economic development tool there is, and I think all of you are very active in your communities, and in a respectful fashion, you make sure that all the candidates are actually being held to what they say as far as their support. We need to hold political leaders accountable. We just need to do. And like I said, and I think we also need to keep talking about high standards. The top 10 by 20. Obviously, I didn't think we should lower the target on the foundation formula, but that is what it is now. But even if you do lower that target, you should get to the target, and you should get to the target quickly. Not use it as an excuse. If they're going to lower how they get graded on a test as far as what's fully funded, then they darn well better fund it, and they better do it dang quick. Okay, but anyway, enough ranting. We can be very encouraged that Missourians support public education by overwhelming margins. They believe in and want to invest in their schools, and they support their teachers. To reflect those values, Missourians need a strong voice for education in the capital and in their communities, and quite frankly, people in this room and the people you represent have to be that voice. Because we properly devolve so much of the power and command and control properly to local schools, the organization and advocacy on behalf of public schools is more difficult. You all know that. So we have a shared responsibility. You can't just expect that Margie or President Shields or somebody else is going to handle Jeff City for you. And you all have the best place to deal with folks in elective office, and that's right there in their homes, in their own home districts. And we have to be that voice united. And also, it does public education no good to be critical of ourselves in public. I mean, everybody here can have a meeting. Everybody here can yell at each other up close. I just advise doing that rather than in public, because and I don't even think yelling's that good, but disagreements are appropriate in the constructive dialogue we need to have. But we need to be, as a force, tough, unyielding, and advocates for our principles. Let me say that one more time. Tough, unyielding, advocates for our principles, and not find ourselves slipping into advocacy for a certain position on a bill or a certain compromise or whatever. You all are you're not expert political consultants, okay? Not because you couldn't be. It's not that hard. But you got jobs and responsibilities back in your communities, okay? So you have to have principles that you advocate for. And if people sway from those principles, then they need to be held accountable. It's one of the reasons why in 7 years you hear me very, very rarely say the word, say words about how people should compromise, but you hear me say that people should cooperate. And here's why I use here's why I don't use those words. Why I use the second word, not the first one. If you tell somebody they need to compromise, you're attacking, in essence, their values. You're saying, wow, you got to give. You got to compromise here. I don't ask anybody to compromise their values, because guess what? Missourians support public education in overwhelming numbers. They support teachers. They support schools. They want their kids to have better education than they did. They support what you're doing. They are generous and helpful, and thousands of examples of that. So we need to get folks to cooperate about moving forward. We're a very diverse state, and each one of your districts has its priorities and its challenges. So the bedrock principles, they aren't negotiable. So those bedrock principles, after looking at this from my chair for now 30 years, are as follows. First and foremost, we know that without resources, public education cannot survive. In one of the lowest tax states in the nation, we can't let fiscal experiments divert one more penny from our classrooms, period. We believe that we have an obligation to educate every child that walks through schoolhouse doors, every child. We believe that teaching is an honorable profession that should be respected and rewarded. We believe in lifting our schools up to reach higher standards with greater rigor and transparency. And we believe that public funds belong in public schools. These are the consistent, unwavering standards against which every policy and every policy maker must be measured. Now, your work has never been more critical to the future of our children, our state, and our nation. You are helping develop our most precious commodity, human potential. A quality education is the key to achieving the American dream, and it's an opportunity every child in our state deserves. Now, one of the last opportunities I'm going to have to speak to so many educators at one time. I want to finish by thanking personally each of you for two things. One, and most importantly, is taking public education as a career. The one thing it guarantees is you're not overpaid, but the other thing it guarantees is your life is going to mean something. What you do in your jobs, it actually means something to individuals. 10 years from now, even when I go visit a school, if they ask some kid in that school, so the governor came, visited your school, yeah. Who was that? I don't know. Some guy. And then you ask that same person, tell me about a teacher or administrator or somebody in that school that made a difference in your life, and they'll be able to talk for a very long time about somebody that affected their lives right there. Okay? And so I thank you for choosing public education as a career. It is a high and noble calling. The second thing is, First Lady and I want to thank you for the courtesies and the openness you show with us. I've been to almost 200 schools. We'll get to some this fall. I'd like to get to every one if I could. Not going to make it. But I thank each of you for how you welcomed us in, how you've embraced us, and how you have made us feel at home in your communities. Because when we go to community, the center of that community is the school. That's where it is. And I just want to say on behalf of her and us and all of our team, thank you for the way that you have made me part of your local family for a while. It's been a privilege to stand up for you and public education for so many years. We have made great progress. And I urge you each to carry this fight on with renewed vigor. So, thank you for your continued strong efforts and commitment to the hope and promise of the most important thing we got in this state, the kids and our future. Thank you, and God bless.